The time is just gone 18 minutes past 9 a.m. as we continue with the broadcast on this Friday morning. We stay in the company of our Salam Media listeners, our viewers on the various platforms, and also One Nation 88.9 FM out of Polokwane. Now, this interview is one that I have been looking forward to because I have been inspired. And we always know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses certain people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses those that He loves and those He wants to bring closer to Him, and also provides guidance, provides hidayah to those whom He pleases. And this is a story of the life of Marhuma Maryam Mary O'Donovan, rahimahumullah. And when I got to hear about this, this is an interview that I wanted to do, and I'm sure many of our listeners, many of our viewers would be very, very keen on listening to what we have to say about the life of Marhuma Maryam O'Donovan, because this is clearly an inspiring account of her reversion to Islam at the age of 83. She passed away a month after accepting Islam, after reverting to Islam on the day of Ashura. And just listening to what some people had to say about her, and someone who was close to her spoke about how frank she was, being an atheist, but she was never disrespectful or scornful of Islam, or the fact that other people who were practicing the deen was silly. She inquired a lot. She had an inquiring mind. She asked a lot of questions. She had a personality, a brain that needed to understand. And this person actually said, I feel that her heart had accepted a long while before, but needed her intellect to come to terms. And living with Muslims and her daughter-in-law and her son for 3 years, and being interacting closely with Bilqis's friends and family who influenced her. And her daughter-in-law, Bilqis Umar, was us this morning. Bilqis, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jummah Mubarak to you and welcome.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Inayat, and Jummah Mubarak to you and the listeners as well.
Yes, Bilqis, I knew who Mary O'Donovan and who later became Maryam was. In fact, I had the pleasure, I had the opportunity of meeting her, of interacting with her. But when you had given me the call, a few weeks ago, informing me that, she had accepted Islam, and, that alone was inspiring in itself. But let's just talk about the life of this wonderful personality, your mother-in-law, Marhuma Maryam Mary O'Donovan, rahimahullah.
Thank you very much, Inayat. So yes, she was 83 years old, like you mentioned. She was a divorced. She was a widow. She was widowed at a very young age. She had 3 children. I married one of her children. And interestingly, she comes from a very eclectic Christian background. And like you mentioned, whenever she met someone, she declared herself to be an atheist. I recall before I married her son, the first thing she did was greeted me and then told me I am an atheist. So her background, her parents were either Presbyterian or agnostic. She married a Catholic man who was also leaning towards the agnostic. And her son currently, one of her sons is a deacon in the church. Her daughter-in-law belongs to an evangelical church. And she was a very strong-minded, strong-willed woman who had to understand, highly intelligent and knowledgeable. So if you mentioned carrot to her, she'll give you the history of a carrot. So she was a very fascinating and interesting woman who spoke her mind.
Well, she certainly did, and in fact, in my interaction with her, and I got to meet her as well, and I can actually concur with what you are saying. But Bilqis, what is inspiring is, as I mentioned, Allah chooses certain people, and she was one that was chosen very, very late in her life at the age of 83. And it was with so much joy. And I recall when you called me as well, the happiness that you had expressed. And just to talk about some of the events that had actually led to her reverting to Islam.
So, like you mentioned, it's difficult. Allah gives hidayah. I think that's the starting point. It's not us. I don't think we have as much influence. I think we are just tools and mechanisms used to assist in a process. So when I thought about what could have led to her reversion, I think there were multiple influences. For example, she was living with her son in Pretoria. She moved to Montgomery Park about 10 years ago, and she moved into the Methodist home. It's a faculty for the aged here in Montgomery Park, and close to West Park Cemetery where she lives, and close to in the area that my husband and I lived in. Now, you need to understand Montgomery Park. So it's a suburb that has experienced an influx of Muslims in the last decade. And this has coincided with a deep sense of community. Here, people look after each other. We have patrollers, we have community events. This past Ramadan, we had a mass iftar where we invited everyone from the community. And in this way, friendships developed, and people used to send food for her. I mean, our friends that lived nearby said she had a sweet tooth. She sent. So I think she's seen the kindness and the sense of community coming through from the Muslim community here. That I think was one of the reasons why she embraced Islam. But also, there was a very big a person in her life who was very influential, and that was her doctor here. So 10 years ago, when she moved to the area, she needed a GP, and she was referred to a doctor in the area who's a Muslim lady, and she is in full parda. And I think the doctor had a very big influence in her life, again, because they used to discuss religion all the time. And like you mentioned, my mother-in-law is a strong-minded woman, and she would say things, and she needed to understand why and what. And she was someone you couldn't lie to, because she had a very probing mind. She was highly intelligent, and I think this doctor had a large influence in her life as well. And then 6 years ago, she broke her hip, and she went to hospital, and we invited her to stay with us during her recovery, my husband and I. And during, and like you say, Allah gives hidayah. We are just the mechanism. And during her stay, and she observed us keeping fast. It was during Ramadan that she was with us, and then reading the salahs. And I'm not the best of Muslims, so I can't say it was me. I mean, I don't even wear the hijab normally. But I think our actions and our behavior have an influence on people. And then when we were fasting in Ramadan as well, she insisted she was fasting with us. She didn't fast in the true sense of the word, but she wouldn't eat in the day. So she was observing our lifestyle and wanted to live the lifestyle again. And then she returned to the Methodist home that she was living in the area. And then 2 years ago, during COVID, when the home closed and the public were not allowed to visit, and her son couldn't visit her as often, and we couldn't visit her as often, she decided she was going to put herself into the frail care unit at the home. And because she, at that time, decided she was bedridden and she wasn't moving, and she'd got care workers to start taking care of her, but she felt she needed to move into the frail care unit. And my husband and I were very saddened by this, because for us, that meant in her mind, it was the last step, towards the end of her life. And we couldn't allow this, maybe out of a sense of responsibility and duty, but also because I wouldn't want my own mother to be living in a home, but also move into a frail care unit. So we invited her to stay with us, and she was very excited about it. And she came with, and she moved in with us. And like I mentioned, in this time she kept seeing her doctor. And I want to emphasize again, I think her doctor played a large part in her reversion to Islam. But once she started moving with us, she started observing our lifestyle again. And then our friends used to visit. From the friends from the community used to visit her a lot and send her sweet treats. And so I think it was mostly the kindness and the actions of people that were very influential in her life. And but ultimately, and I want to emphasize this, hidayah comes from Allah. You mentioned it yourself as well. And, we are just a tool assisting in the process.
Yes. Now, Bilkis, just looking at her acceptance of Islam, how did that actually come about?
So Inayat, a few months ago, she fell very sick. She was admitted to hospital, and the doctors found a tumor on her brain, a 4 centimeter tumor on her brain. And she left. She got back home, and her health started deteriorating rapidly since then. So so she was living in the cottage at the back because she had care workers, and she needed her privacy as well. So I used to sit with her a lot, and my husband used to sit. Our friends used to visit her, and on one Saturday morning, I just happened to, while we were chatting casually, I happened to mention to her that, you lived with me for a few years, and I thought you would become a Muslim. And interestingly, I posed this to her while she was at the hospital a few months before that, and she ignored me. Just looks straight past me, and she ignored me. But on this Saturday morning, when I did raise it with her again, she asked me what it would entail, what becoming a Muslim entailed. And I told her, you just have to take the Shahada, you have to read the Kalima. I read it for her in English. There is no God but Allah, and and Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is his messenger. She said, oh, is that all? So I said, yes. She said, then I want to be a Muslim. So while I was excited, I didn't show it. And I called my husband and I told him, your mom wants to revert, and is it okay? And he said, yes, so sure, fine, that's good. So I made her read the Kalima, and I left. And because she was so ill at that point, and I also thought she was doing it to please me. She was quite fond of me, and we had a good relationship. So I still didn't really accept that maybe she accepted it, but I accepted or reverted to Islam. But I felt she was doing it to please me. But shortly after that, I started FaceTiming her grandchildren because I felt she needed to see her children and talk to her grandchildren. And on her own, without prompting, she started reading the kalima to her grandchildren, and these are two separate grandchildren in two separate places. So they asked me, what is she saying? So I said, your granny reverted to Islam, and and it was just the events from that day onwards were just mind blowing to me. You could see Allah's power, Allah's greatness, Allah's mercy as well in this part in those few weeks. And um, and and then she then her doctor came to visit her, and her doctor was also quite pleased. And then we got the appa from the local masjid, the Maulana's wife, who came over the next few weeks just to teach her a few things, the la ilaha, the bismillah, the tayammum. And then I think since then things just started going uphill for her in terms of Dean and her acceptance. During the last few days, she was experiencing a lot of pain, and we used to read to her. So just little things like the kalima or la Allahu Allahu, and on her own she started repeating this. So I recall when she was in a lot of pain, and I used to read the Allahu, Allahu to her, and she was repeating it after me. And when I stopped reading it, she continued on her own. She wasn't very articulate at that moment because the tumor was affecting her speech, her eyesight, and even her swallowing. But on her own, she started repeating it after me. And and when others came to visit her and they were praying at her bedside, she was repeating the verses. And also when you read Salah in front of her, and you say Allahu Akbar, she's in her own way was saying Allahu Akbar as well. So it was the most beautiful journey of someone having reverted, accepting the religion so openly and wholeheartedly, and it was just the most beautiful thing that happened. And the sad part was she was slipping away slowly, and yet there was this whole new arena in her life, this whole new time of her life where these miracles were happening. And I call them miracles because you would have had to experience her praying and her reading to understand what this reversion is, and how, like you said, Allah accepts people who He loves, and how He chose her and why He chose her, only Allah knows.
Well, certainly Allah only knows, but you speak of these miracles, but also at the same time, just observing what you did right towards the end of her life. I'm feeling the emotion as you are talking right now, Bilkis, and I'm sure sure, you felt the emotion. Your husband must have felt the emotion. Everybody else, who had been close to her in the last few days and the last few weeks of her life. And, once again, the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala manifesting itself. And I'm sure, right till the end, till her passing away. And just looking at the rest of the family, you mentioned the grandchildren. How did they react?
So, Inayat, her family are beautiful people. I know them since I'm married to my husband. They accepted me as a Muslim. They accepted my husband's reversion without question, and they accepted my mm, mm, my role in their life. And when she did tell her children that she had reverted to Islam, you know, Inayat, there was no negativity emanating from them. They accepted it. Even if they felt any disappointment, they never showed it or communicated it to us. And when she passed away on that morning of Ashura, before that, my husband was preparing them. We have a WhatsApp group, and he was informing them that if she has to pass away, the mayat is going to be very quick and very soon, so it's not going to be delayed. They would have to prepare themselves. And on the morning when she passed away, and they kept asking us in the group, what should they wear, when should they come? So it was the acceptance was so beautiful, and the manner in which they conducted themselves, and when they did come for the mayat, the respect they accorded us and her and the community and the friends that were around, and absolutely no negativity. And they came in and removed their shoes, got into the room, sat at her side, and reminisced about her life a little. And even in the kabar, her son, my husband, his brother, and the two nephews went into the kabar, and they followed the prayers, and they followed the instructions that the local community boys were giving them in terms of how to fill the kabar and things. So they just very wonderful people who embraced there was no negativity. They accepted her shahada. They also knew their mother was strong-minded, I suppose, so they were not going to argue with her. And but since then, we see them, we hear them. His sister was here. My husband's sister was here yesterday. So it's just a beautiful relationship with very beautiful people that I have in my life.
Well, Bilkis, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala works in his own way. And your marriage to Michael, who became Mikhail, and who would have thought, and I don't think you in your wildest of dreams would have thought that by you getting married, the end result would be another person, his mother, coming into the fold of Islam. And, that is why I say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has got his own ways. And sometimes we cannot understand, but it is at times like these, it is when events like these take place, that we sit back and we reflect, and it gives us a lot to introspect and to think about it, and this is the beauty. This is the beauty, of Islam, where we know that all of this comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And, just yesterday, alhamdulillah, I had the opportunity of visiting her qabr as well, because I normally go and visit my sister, and she's about 5 qabrs away from my sister. And I stood at the qabr, and, I was just in awe. And that is the reason why I think for me, this interview, is not only emotional, but it's inspired me in more ways than one. And I'm sure it does inspire a lot more people just listening to what you say as you reflect on her life and her reversion to Islam, Bilkis.
Yes, Inayat, like I said, my first meeting was with her, and she mentioned I'm an atheist, and her ending was so beautiful. You can't not be in awe of Allah's greatness and Allah's power and Allah's mercy also of her. That what did he see in her? What did he love about her? That he chose her, and that the fact that she could die on the Fijr time at Ashura, on Ashura day, it just it's you write, you reflect, you introspect, you think about life in a totally different. I know it's changed me, it's changed my husband a lot. And once again, I think it's the actions of people around us, it's the influence of the people, it's the kindness of the people. And it's the only way that we can do dawah, I think, if we want to invite people into the religion and into the deen and the fold of Islam. So it's a journey that I will never ever forget, and it was the most beautiful experience we've had these last few weeks.
Well, certainly, and also, we know that 83 years of her life and whatever she's done prior to that, that entire slate has been wiped completely clean, and it is that last few weeks of her life that actually matter, and that is the reason why Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has chosen her, and she is in a much better place. And we continue making dua that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala fill her qabr with nur. Allah Subhanahu wa Taala grant her forgiveness. Allah Subhanahu wa Taala grant her the highest stages in Jannah, and where she is right now, Alhamdulillah, in a much better place. And as I mentioned, 83 years of her life wiped out completely in a matter of seconds just by reciting the Shahada alone.
Yes, Inayat, it's mind blowing. It's something that if we can't get over. And Alhamdulillah, Allah's mercy is so great, and inshallah we all follow the same path, and live that example, that her life or what she may have done that has endeared her to Allah, and created that moment where she accepted the Islam. And I keep thinking she was doing it to please me, and but the actions and her belief and her steadfastness and her the comfort and peace she was getting in during her worst moments show you that Allah's power and Allah's greatness once again. And it's you don't take life lightly when you see things like this happen.
Well, clearly, Bilkis, definitely a lot of lessons to be learned, but we want to say Jazakallah to you. We want to thank you. We appreciate you taking time out and sharing what you have. And I'm sure this has inspired many a listener this morning on this beautiful day of Jummah. So we wish you well. We wish your family well, inshallah. And once again, Jazakallah for your time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Shukran wa alaikum salam.
Bilkis Umar, the daughter-in-law of Marhuma Maryam Mary O'Donovan, rahimahumullah, her reversion to Islam, and inspiring, so inspiring in more ways than one. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the ability to stay on Iman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take us away from with Iman from this world. The time is just gone, 9:41. When we come back, we will be joined by Aisha Fundi, who is on standby.